If you call yourself a trail rider, then you should know what this is. The Yamaha WR450F, more specifically the 2026 model Yamaha WR450F. So the Yamaha WR450F is the big dog in the Blue Crew lineup. It's that kind of bike that has more power than probably anyone actually needs, but for 2026 they haven't really changed much. They've just kind of stuck with what is a pretty solid package, and they've just kind of fine-tuned some bits around the edges. So for 2026, you get a lockable ECU. Now, this is a pretty cool option that Yamaha have also included on the WR250F. Essentially, it's a smart anti-theft feature you can access through the Power Tuner app. You punch in a password and you can stop anyone else from firing up your WR and riding away with it. So that comes in handy, and it kind of goes to show that Yamaha are probably thinking a little bit more outside the box and not just about how they can make their bike faster and maybe easier to ride. They're thinking about how safe they can make it too. Other than that, the only visual tweaks are lighter blue fork guards and a fresh set of radiator shroud graphics. So BMGs round out the changes for 2026. But that's a good thing when you've got a bike that's as much of a beast as this thing is. You probably don't really need to change that much. Underneath, it's still the same 450cc liquid-cooled double overhead cam 4-valve engine that pumps out a ton of torque and power. It has that 13.0 to 1 compression ratio, fuel injection and a 5-speed gearbox. It still has the bilateral beam frame, gives it that signature WR feel, which to some people might be a bit rigid, but we think it's balanced, it's predictable, and you can charge into bumps and know the whole chassis will hold up. Up front, it runs a 300mm KYB fork, and out the back, it runs a KYB shock with 306mm of travel. It gets a 270mm disc up front, that's a Nissan, and it gets a 240mm disc out the back, and that is also a Nissan caliper. Seat height comes in at 955mm, and ground clearance in at 330mm. So it's a bit of a tall beast, but most 450F enduro bikes are going to be on a slightly bigger side for those that are shorter stature. And the wet weight is 117 kilos. So that's what it weighs with all its fuel and oils in it. And that's with 7.4 litres of fuel. So it's slightly heavier than some of the other competitors, but that's because of all the ADR gear that adds to the weight. So for 2026, the updates are small, but the bike remains massive in every other sense. It has a theft-proof ECU, a splash of new blue, and the same legendary mix of reliability, grunt, and control. Because when it comes to enduro bikes, sometimes less change is a good thing, as we are probably going to find out when we go test this now. So stay tuned. Okay, we've now finished our testing for the Yamaha WR450F. This is the 2026 model. I have with me Jeff Briggs and Wes Mills. We've kind of got these two guys because it just helps me add another element of the test factor with Briggsy, who is in his early 40s and motocross, enduro, desert. He's done adventure tests with us. He's done our adventure comparator. He's pretty much ridden every electric trials bikes for us, every adventure bike, every trials bike, every enduro bike you can imagine, and motocross. And Wes Mills, we wanted Wes here today because he's a motocrosser who's now dabbling in the whole enduro thing. So we wanted Wes's opinion jumping off probably a YZ250F and onto a WR250F. So before we get onto that bike, we're going to talk about the WR450F. Boys, Briggsy, first thoughts, you hop on that bike. What's your first thoughts when you hop on and you're sitting on it?
Comfortable. Yeah, I like the ergos of the YZ. They've always been pretty good. But once you get it in the bush, she's an animal. Definitely got a motor, that you want.
It's powerful. There's two map modes. Obviously, it has also the option to change the mapping with your phone using the Yamaha Power Tuner app.
Yep.
But the two maps that come standard on the handlebar, did you play with them and what did they do?
Yeah, I did. So the blue was the standard map. It was a lot more mellow, a lot more smooth and linear compared to the aggressive map, which really felt like as soon as you wrap that on, she was lighting up the back wheel. But in saying that, I think it's got a place, and I feel like it's a really versatile bike that in the open it works really well, but it still handles the tight stuff not too bad.
And we talked a bit before, we kind of all said this, we came off the bike and we found like when you let the clutch out on this bike, because it's such a big powerful motor, in a lot of the tight stuff where we're riding today is good kind of 250cc capacity territory, so riding a big bike in there, it felt like it kind of wanted to run on a bit. That's how I felt. Did you feel any of that?
A little bit. I'd really like to play with a flywheel weight on it. I think that would make a big difference in the tighter stuff, and just some gearing changes I think could make it a bit better in the tighter stuff. But overall I didn't find it too bad. I was using the clutch a little more than I normally do just for that reason. When you're going around them slower corners, it doesn't want to flame out, but it runs really low in the revs because the gearing's so high being a 5-speed. But once you get used to it, I don't find it too bad.
We're going to come to the clutch in a minute because I think that's important, because this is one of the only 450s in the class left with a cable clutch. But before we do, Wes, hopping onto a 450 now, you normally ride 125s and 252 strokes. What did you think of the big WR450F? Let's talk motor.
Okay, motor characteristics. As soon as you roll from stop to go, you can feel like it just wants to keep going. The throttle response is very smooth, even though it's an animal of a motor. You can tame it. You can ride it a gear high and just kind of roll into the turns and just be patient. Like if you're patient with the bike and just learn to just rolling on into ruts without trying to push and things like that till you get used to it, I found that that was a much easier way to ride such a powerful bike. So I only liked it on the mellow map, and then the 250, we'll cut to that, but the 250 I rode on the aggressive map for just other reasons. But just because of it having such a big inertia, you tend to find that tipping it into tight turns, you do feel the weight. But rolling the throttle on, I was quite surprised of how smooth the bike is still. But if you ride it aggressive, like, you got to know about it really quickly.
Yeah, I think that for me too, that motor, I only rode it in the mellow map as well. And you know, a lot of bigger capacity 4-strokes you can kind of lug. I felt like when I lugged this one, it's so powerful and it just wants to keep going. Even I found lugging it was tricky. The motor is a monster. I think the motor would suit guys who are on more open 4-wheel drive track, fire road, guys out probably further out west or in the middle of Australia that have more space than probably riding tight single track around the coast.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it'd even suit the guys that are familiar with a big bike, like the 450 size, in the sense that if they were the type of guys that went back in the past where they'd throw a pipe and mapping and all that sort of ignition and things like on 450s, I think that this straight out of the crate, you don't have to do any of those things. So it does have those right out of the box sort of
Feel
feels,
to it.
yeah.
Yeah, I think I think it probably also suits maybe bigger blokes. I think Briggsy, you said this before, or Wes, you said it as well. Like anyone kind of over the 100-kilo mark would probably feel quite comfortable on it because it's firmly sprung. We'll get to that in a second, but it's that motor. The motor's so powerful that I think a bigger bloke would suit it. But for Aussie conditions, for most people who don't ride tight single track, you know, in the forest around the coast, man, I think that motor is friggin' lethal. It's awesome. It's so powerful and strong.
Yeah, in my opinion, it's a great all-rounder. You can ride it in the sand, you can ride it in open trails, you can ride it on a motocross track, and it'll do all three brilliantly.
Let's move on to the clutch. You mentioned the clutch before, Briggsy, too. Now, it is one of the last cable clutches left in the 450 class. The Kawasaki KLX 450R still runs one. The rest, I'm pretty sure, are on hydraulic clutches. Now, everyone bags the cable clutch. I find that thing so light, especially for a 450, and even though it's a bush bike, and so, you know, you're kind of swinging off the clutch to get on and up and down hills a little bit more, I didn't find it faded too bad, and I found it light on my forearm.
Yeah, it's every bit as good as a hydraulic clutch in my opinion. It's light enough, it's got good feel, it's got great adjustability, which the hydraulic clutches don't have. You can adjust where you want your lever a bit easier and quicker. And I'm not a real heavy clutch guy. I very rarely use my clutch, but when I do, I found it really fine. Like it was fine.
You talked about the adjusting the clutch, which is what you can do with these cable clutches. I hopped on the bike after you had hopped on it, Wes, and you run your clutch lever in such a different position to me, and to feel like it's all the way out, you let your clutch lever out, and I let my clutch lever right into the handlebars.
I do.
So that's handy with the cable.
But the
you
thing,
can adjust.
yeah, well, this bike I didn't use it other than saving it from flaming out. Just didn't like, which is so rare for me because I'm constantly fanning or like feathering the clutch, which I shouldn't do. I left it alone, so I actually got a real feel of the motor. I didn't really give the clutch much of a durability test or how it feels with the cable or anything like that. Like I've always bought Japanese bikes and bought the aftermarket hydraulic kit for every single bike that I've ridden. But for some reason, every single YZ or I haven't had a WR, but every YZ that I've had, I've never changed the clutch to a hydraulic, just because of the free-feeling cable.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. So that's how light they are. You've never actually changed the Yami one.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to suspension and frame. This model got a big rework last year. This is the 26, obviously the 25, or maybe it was 24, got the big changes. The suspension, I'm 100 kilos, and I throw some gear on, I get heavier, obviously. I really like that suspension. I find it doesn't beat me up. Like I would expect, it's kind of motocrossy, the suspension, it's firm, so you'd feel like maybe over the choppy stuff it'd beat you up a bit, but I found it still compliant, but it's just never blew through with my weight. And then the chassis itself, kind of, you've got a lot of single track kind of ruts out here through the corners. It was pretty easy to keep the rear end to follow the front end. I felt like the chassis was pretty predictable. It didn't buck funny and it didn't step out. Wes, let's start with you. You're probably the lightest of us here. How did you find the suspension on the 450?
Look, firm. It felt like just a traditional motocross bike for me because of probably my weight. A few clicker settings softer would have been perfect, but it wasn't bothering me at all. I think that when they bed in a little bit, just after a couple hours of riding, it always seems to change a little bit like that. So, look, it was right in the comfort zone. There was no deflecting on routes and things that were harsh. So, all in all, like with the suspension feel, there was just wasn't that instant thing of changing. I talked about the things that I would change, but they were so minor, but nothing really going in front of suspension other than a couple of clickers.
Briggsy, I saw you today jump a section of the road that was a big gap that if you had got it wrong could have been quite interesting.
I kind of did get it right.
Yeah, but you over jumped it, right? You landed in the hole.
Yeah.
The suspension, the
the
fork.
next hole.
Yeah, the next hole over. The fork just kind of soaked it up.
Yeah, no, look, I ride a lot of motocross and it was fine on the track. Everything we rode today, it held up great for me. I'm 93 kilo, throw gear on 95, 97. And I took it into the paddock through some whoops I got there. I took it on the motocross track, I took it in the bush, and it did everything. It even handled the slow enduro rocky stuff that we did really well. The chassis I find works. What they've done with the YZ refinement, they've brought it over to the WR now, and it works really well. It's very balanced out of the box. I don't feel like it wants to dive, or it doesn't seesaw like the YZ's traditionally used to with that powerful engine. Used to kind of want to feel like it's doing this and that when you're braking. It's very comfortable, very predictable, tracks really well. I really enjoyed it, yeah.
Now you're going to race the off-road series next year. Is this suspension good enough to get it out of the crate, do maybe a bit of tinkering? Like you said, you're 90-something kilos, a bit of tinkering too, and kind of go racing on it?
Yeah, 100%, yeah. I might, if I was going to race it, I'd probably go a spring rate firmer for myself, but I could get through a race on that. Yeah, no problem.
That's impressive. Last thing we're going to talk about now is the ergonomics. For 2026, we've got that grippier seat, and there's been some ECU changes. How do you guys find the ergonomics? I find with the Yamis, they have that little scoop in the seat in the front or around the middle of the seat that makes me feel like I sit in it a bit, and the bars have maybe a slightly higher bend. My personal preference is for a flatter seat, being a taller guy, and probably a flatter bend. I don't like the tall bend bars. But ergonomics, it feels a little less chunky than previous model WRs. Some of the previous model WRs with a big fat headlight and the big bar pad and everything hanging off around here, they felt a bit agricultural, whereas I think this is becoming a little more European. Thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because with the seat, the shape of it, it's not a traditional flat seat with the edges, and I used to use the edges as a guide of where I was sitting on the bike, but it flows seamlessly with body positioning. Yep. I find it. Look, it's not. I didn't really pay much attention to the seat, and that's probably a good thing, because then it's not something that's bugging you. So, look, bars are higher than I would run, but nothing was bothering me in the sense that I couldn't feel comfortable, and I think just by being at that sort of angle and pitch and height, it kind of suits the broad riders that would ride that size bike.
Yep.
Yeah, for me, I like that. It is a trail bike. It feels more like a trail bike or an older motocross style. The new beaters and Shercos and KTMs, you're very up on top.
Yeah.
The seat's very flat and you're over the bars a lot more. This one's not quite like that, but it's still comfortable, every bit comfortable. It's got the YZ skinniness now. They've pulled that into the tank. I mean, you go back to 2012.
Yeah, that's a
and you're
big
sitting
thing.
like
Yeah.
this, like, you know. So it is a nice feeling bike. I really enjoy it. And I had a WR450 last year, really loved it. Yeah, Yamahas are still a great bike.
So I guess the last thing I forgot to mention too is, and it probably comes in with the suspension, the chassis, the ergos, is that in the past, and I should have tried it today, I have liked to push the fork legs through the triple clamps a little, because I did find coming out of corners, if I was sitting down to come out of a corner, the front end would just wander out the front of the rut a little bit earlier than I'd like to. So if I probably owned one, I'd probably just push the fork legs through the clamps just to lower that front end to help me get it in a little bit better, because I don't think I'd lose anything by doing that personally. Is there anything that you guys would suggest to people setup-wise if they were to buy this bike? The first things you'd do setup-wise?
Rear tyre.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. The rear tyre, it's 140 wide, and it feels wide and thick. It doesn't have a great edge on it. I mean, it's an FIM tyre. They're not bad, but they're just, compared to an MX-34 or an AT81 or whatever you run, I just find the grip's not there.
Yeah, well, we're looking at the shape of the tyre just because it's so wide on that tyre, on that rim, that it's curved all the way at the top. So you're getting that power sliding sort of effect rather than that bite when you're driving forward.
Yeah.
Sidewalls are okay.
Yeah.
But in saying that, like maybe dropping a few more PSI might help, but I think that you nip it in the bud and just get a different tyre.
Yep. Well, that's good timing, because I tell you what, it doesn't take a chicken to ride a WR450F. It takes more than a chicken. They've had enough. I'm going to wrap it up right now.
Yeah.
But that tyre is a Dunlop Enduro. And I agree with you, probably a tyre change. Otherwise, I'm also with you guys.
And an oversized front disc. Every 450 should have, have an oversized front disc.
Yeah.
It's a tractor.
Yeah.
Like, they're all tractors, you know.
Funnily enough, but like we didn't change a clicker today.
Yeah.
We didn't change fork height. We didn't do sag even.
Yeah.
And out of the box, it still was a great bike.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can refine everything. I'd like to get the sag and the fork height. Like, it's something you'd dabble in if you owned it yourself, and probably just go to the online settings through people who test them, and then maybe a firmer spring for me. But ergos wise, it's a great bike.
Yeah, you'd leave it as is.
I would,
largely.
Yeah, mostly.
And if someone was to say, what would be the kind of spec of person that you would recommend buy this bike? Let's go from ability, size, where they live, male, female, age. Who would you recommend? Like me personally, I would say to someone, you've probably got to be slightly heavier. Like if you don't want to make any drastic changes, you've got to probably be over 90 kilos. You like riding more open, fast stuff, and you're pretty confident, pretty strong, and able to tame it. A big boy. For
me, I'd say an experienced rider.
Yeah.
You'd want to be that B grade motocross level above, or someone who wants to race occasionally an enduro, but rides at least once a week.
Yep.
Because these bikes, just any 450 really, once you get tired and that throttle comes on, you're in trouble pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I'd just say the more experienced rider who's looking for a race-ready bike, who wants something that's got a lot of power, handles well, ready to go out the box. Yeah, perfect bike.
You, Wes?
Probably someone that's dabbling in a bit of a midlife crisis.
What, they want to die? Or?
Yeah, I like it.
Look, I think that's like, to me, it seems like the Corvette of like the midlife crisis. It's like, it's got all the fire breathing power you want, and if you tame it, it can be exciting, and I don't know. Honestly, I think that if you're a safe, experienced rider, like Briggsy just said, I think I didn't hurt myself on it today. It's a good sign. I didn't have a tip over or anything like that, but just the little things, like if you get unstuck just that little bit and you just don't have that experience or the weight or a bit of combination of both, that you raise your chances of having a bit of a spill.
Yeah, so, on a big bike like that.
On a big bike, but mind you, it is so nice just to cruise around too. Like even if you're just not having to shift so many gears like a 250. So if you're responsible and experienced,
you'd be fine.
I think you'd be fine, and I think it would appeal to a wide range of riders around 80 kilos.
Yep.
And up.
Okay, that's it, guys. We're going to wrap it up now. We have another story coming with this bike. We have done mapping, and we're going to give you guys 3 or 4, depending on how many we decide on in the end, maps that we've chosen for this bike. That's a trail map, a really slow, sluggish map, a full-blown race map, and we'll come up with some other kind of map that we probably used a lot of today. And you can use your Power Tuner app and just put it straight into your 2026 model Yamaha WR450F. So stay tuned for that story. For now, that's it on the WR450F, and we'll catch you next time doing the WR250F.